Today, we'll be discussing the recent high school shooting in Texas,
followed by a safety officer involved shooting out of Long Beach.
And finally, we speak with the Surfrider Foundation to get an update on the Huntington Beach Oil Spill. All this and much more on this episode of The Report. Hi everyone, I'm Chris Adler.
I'm Amanda Mendoza.
And I'm Jorge Flores. It's October, and that means it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Join us here at The Report in wearing pink to support the cause and to spread awareness for all those who have had or who are currently battling breast cancer. Follow us on Twitter at The Report CSUF or on our Titan TV Instagram, Titan TV CSUF, to keep in touch with us and view our new content.
Police responded to reports of an active shooter at a Texas high school on Tuesday where 4 people were reportedly shot. The suspect was immediately identified as 18-year-old Timothy George Simpkins, a student at the high school who opened fire after a fight with a fellow student. Simpkins initially fled the campus, but later turned himself in after obtaining an attorney. 3 people had serious injuries, one of which is in critical condition requiring surgery. Another had a minor injury, refusing treatment. A pregnant woman was reportedly one of the 4 people hurt, but she required no further assistance. Police said in a news conference that they believe at least 2 of the victims who were shot were students and that at least one other person may have been a teacher. Arlington police said that they were doing a methodical search and working closely with surrounding police departments before the suspect was in custody. The school was on lockdown with reports of many students in tears reaching out to their parents via cell phone. According to a report from CBS Dallas-Fort Worth, a person claiming to be a teacher at the high school posted to social media saying, quote, "Shots were fired from the hall from our classroom," end quote. The identity of the person who posted that has not been confirmed. The police adamantly said that this was a random act of violence and that the shooter intentionally drew a weapon after a fight on campus. Police planned and coordinated an orderly exit for students to be reunited with their parents, and when asked by media how the student got the gun into the school, the officers said that they did not have that information. Should schools have metal detectors to ensure that shootings like this do not occur again?
You know, in my opinion, yes. I mean, we know this, guys, already. A few weeks ago, we talked about another shooting, another mass shooting. Yeah. Maybe it's in a public space. Maybe it's in schools. For sure, as a student, I think that schools, they are not safe anymore. And that's something that we should really look into, at least from the government. And from the school districts, yes, I am completely agreed that they should have some metal detectors. Also, once again, gun control. It's the same debate, and it's been over more than 5 years, and it's the same debate on should we have more gun control or not. In my opinion, like I mentioned before, yes, I think we need more gun control for us to understand what kind of people they're getting it. It's not possible that anyone freely, at least, they can just get and buy a gun and no one knows about it. So now having this example in a school, having people shot, this means that schools, they are not safe anymore and that we need action today.
Yes, and 4 people were shot and injured. Luckily, nobody has died that we have any reports on yet. It could have been much more grim than it was. You know, it's interesting that the police said, oh, you know, we can't comment on that. And but he was going in and out of the school. He could see whether or not there were metal detectors. And so without saying that, he was trying to save face by not saying that. But we definitely need metal detectors in the school. It's sad. It's sad that it has come to that. But if we don't do that, this is going to keep happening. This is going to keep happening. We need stricter security. Why is the school not getting the funding that they need to provide adequate security? People should not be able to walk in with guns on a campus anywhere. And it's a sad state we're living in, but it's the reality. The gun control is a problem. But even if they're not purchasing the guns and they're getting them off the streets, those guns cannot make it through the doors of the school if we have metal detectors or if we're doing searches. And it's sad. But by the end of this semester, we will report on another shooting. We definitely will. And that's a sad reality.
Do you think that this should happen for every high school? or every middle school, elementary school even? Or do you think just at this high school specifically because of this incident?
Well, I will add, it should be for any type of level in any school. Like, I don't think it's just because they're in high school, they may have more access to a gun. I think like now we just gotta be prepared. The thing, at least in my opinion, it's enough. I got enough. I mean, it's always the same debate, and there's only words and speeches from politicians or maybe officers from school districts, but that's it. But we really need to take action today. Like you mentioned, school districts, they need to start making those policies to become a reality, right?
We absolutely do. I would feel much safer if we had at all entry point of Cal State Fullerton had a metal detector, because we're not just talking about guns, but we're also talking about knives, other weapons that have actually been used. A person was murdered on campus. So, I mean, and our campus is relatively safe. It's much more safe than a lot of other campuses, thank God. But this is what the world we're living in. We're going to have to do something. And I think a start would be putting metal detectors in and then hiring security. We need to. Our tax dollars need to go towards something like that, because it can't keep happening. True. You're not safe anywhere.
Exactly.
Nobody's safe. Let's hope that all the victims of the shooting are okay and have a speedy recovery. Now, in the Southland, Orange County beaches are closed due to a major oil slick that has created a hazard for animals and humans alike. A federal class action lawsuit has been filed against the company that runs the oil pipeline that dumped hundreds of thousands of gallons of crude oil into the ocean in Huntington Beach. The proposed lawsuit filed Monday claimed that the companies in charge of the oil rig were responsible for harm to people, wildlife, and local ecosystems. About 144,000 gallons of crude oil spilled into the Pacific on Saturday and made it to the Huntington Beach shoreline by Sunday, closing Huntington and Newport beaches and canceling the final day of the Huntington Beach Air Show. Divers found a 13-inch crack found on a 4,000-foot section of the pipe. Governor Gavin Newsom declared the spill a state of emergency for what is being called California's worst oil spill in over 3 decades. The city of Huntington Beach said Sunday that fish and birds are washing ashore covered in oil. Martin Wilshire, CEO of Amplify Energy, who operates the pipeline, said in a news conference that a ship anchor striking the pipeline is, quote, one of the distinct possibilities behind the leak, end quote. Environmental Director for the Surfrider Foundation, Pete Stauffer, is joining us today to give us a look into the disaster along our coast. Hi, Pete. Welcome to the report. We're so grateful to have you today. We know that you've got a lot going on down there. Can you tell us a little bit about what the situation is looking like right now, and especially with the wildlife that are being affected?
Yeah, sure. Well, we had a major oil spill off Orange County a few days ago, about 4.5 miles off the coast. A oil pipeline ruptured and released about 140,000 gallons of oil into the ocean, is what officials estimate. So there's a major cleanup underway right now, trying to contain the spill, trying to keep it offshore. Thus far, I think there have been reports of oil in Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, primarily, with the oil extent sort of ranging from Seal Beach down to Dana Point. And from what we know and can see from the satellite imagery, it looks like, again, most of the oil is a couple miles offshore and seems to be moving south with the currents and the wind.
Has a spill affected anyone personally? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly in Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, they've issued beach closures. They've canceled, major events. And so it's been very disruptive for local businesses and the local community. For Huntington and Newport and really all of Southern California, beach recreation and tourism is sort of the lifeblood of the economy. So yeah, the spill is having major impacts for sure.
For those who are interested in helping these costs in order to maintain our environment clean and safe, is there a process? What can we do?
That's a great question. We've been flooded by thousands of requests for people that want to help with the cleanup. Because the cleanup itself, oil is very toxic. Right now, only trained professionals are able to participate. But there is a sign-up form for people who are interested. with the state of California. And Surfrider also has a volunteer list that you can sign up on surfrider.org. Obviously, there's lots of other ways that people can take positive action. Surfrider is really urging members of Congress to pass legislation to permanently ban new offshore drilling off our coast, because that's the source of this problem. And so, our opportunity right now is to make sure that we don't have new offshore drilling off the Pacific or anywhere in U.S. waters.
And can you talk about the animals that have been found? I know that they mentioned birds and fish, but what other animals, if any, have died because of the spill?
Yeah, oil is highly toxic to birds, to fish, to the marine environment and invertebrates. We have participated in some briefings with the Coast Guard and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they are recovering, oiled birds, including some pelicans. We've seen, obviously, fish, dead fish washing up on shore. But doing a full accounting and ecological assessment of all the damage, that's going to take months or even years. So, right now, most of the effort has just been focused on sort of containing and responding to the spill. But again, the Unified Command, which is Coast Guard and California Department of Fish and Wildlife, they are issuing daily updates on the cleanup, including impacts to wildlife.
Do you think that people will be able to go back and swim at Huntington Beach like they were before the spill within the next coming months or years?
That's a great question. They've obviously instituted the beach closures locally. One of the things that Surfrider is really pushing for is for them to start water quality monitoring for oil contamination. And that will be led by the Environmental Protection Agency, working with local government. At this point, it's hard to predict, what would be that time frame. But obviously, we're just urging our members and sort of local supporters to exercise caution, to check local government websites before they go, and getting that testing up and running and the information out to the public. It's going to be really critical because beach going is a way of life down here in Southern California, both for the people that live here and the people that visit. So that's really a big issue.
Pete, I have a question for you. In terms of the organization, do you have a plan as the organization with local government? You mentioned that there is a lot of work between the local agencies for us to keep this situation to occur once again in the future?
Yeah, no, we do have a few priorities. First and foremost is just pushing for a full and comprehensive cleanup by the agencies and by Amplify Energy, which is the responsible party. And so that cleanup is ongoing and we're monitoring it very closely. We are looking forward to finding ways to getting our volunteer chapters and other supporters who want to help. There will likely be some trainings held, because it's hazardous material that to participate in the cleanup, you do need to, in most cases, go through that training. We are having dialogue with our elected officials and agencies to try and understand, why did this happen? How can we avoid it happening in the future? And again, really pushing for a federal ban on new offshore drilling, which members of Congress could do right now. There's legislation on the table.
Well, Pete, we really appreciate what your foundation is doing for the beaches down there. As you said, I grew up in Southern California, so when the beach is hurt, we're hurt too, especially our ecosystems, our wildlife. It's been devastating seeing what's happened. And hopefully we can take a step forward in trying to come to a resolution to stop this offshore drilling, because if there's pipes in the ocean, it's going to happen. And we really cannot afford to have another oil spill ever. So, but thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you being here with us and giving us some insight of what's going on down there.
Well, thanks for covering this story. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day. Like Pete said, if you're interested in volunteering for upcoming cleanup opportunities, please text oil spill, one word, to 51555 or complete a form on the Surfrider website, surfrider.org. You will be added to a list of interested volunteers and will receive updates on ways to get involved. If you find oiled or sick wildlife, call the Oiled Wildlife Care Network at 877-823-6962. People are being asked not to approach potentially affected wildlife, as you can cause more harm than good to the animals. So it will be interesting to see if Congress can do anything about this and if we can get a petition going and what can be done, because with pipes in the ocean, we're going to have oil in the ocean.
Exactly, and this is most likely to continue. And not only will it affect us, but it will also affect our ecosystems and other animals. So I think it's really important to be aware of what's happening.
Totally. I think it's today the time that we can take action and get more involved with this organization and helping to this cause. Wow, and that was a sad story and overall tragic time right now for California's wildlife. Let's hope that this oil spill can clean up soon. The city of Long Beach is handling its own tragedy after a young mother dies from a head injury. The woman was shot in the head by a Millikan high school safety officer Tuesday and was taken off life support. 18-year-old Mona Rodriguez was in a fight with a 15-year-old outside of the Long Beach High School on September 27th when a safety officer intervened. According to Long Beach Police, Rodriguez got into her vehicle and drove off when the safety officer opened fire while Rodriguez and her boyfriend fled the scene. A student recorded the incident where the officer is seen firing at least 3 shots at the vehicle while Rodriguez's boyfriend and father of their 5-month-old baby boy drives the car away from the officer. His 16-year-old brother was in the backseat and reported to CNN that the safety officer only warned Rodriguez about using pepper spray. According to the Long Beach Unified School District's use of force police, a school safety officer only has the duty to use firearms for self-defense or for the defense of others to prevent great bodily injury or death. It also states that officers shall not fire warning shots, fire at fleeing person, fire at moving vehicle, or through a vehicle window unless, quote, circumstances clearly warrant the use of a firearm as a final means of defense, end quote. In a statement released on Wednesday, Rodriguez's family said Mona, quote, gave a heart, a liver, lungs, and 2 kidneys to save the lives of 5, end quote. According to the family, all of the doctors and nurses at Long Beach Memorial Hospital gave Mona a hero celebration by standing in the hallway as she was taken into the operation with her favorite song being played. The safety officer has been fired as police have ruled the act of homicide. The case is under investigation through the Los Angeles County District Attorney. The family of Mona Rodriguez is seeking charges against the officer, calling his actions inexcusable. A GoFundMe account was set up for the Rodriguez family, which has raised over $30,000. And these kind of stories really impact us one more time because we're looking for this brutality of police officers. Now, it's another story of the schools. It's another story about a safety officer that is taking action with no permission and with no excuse. In my opinion, I really agree that this man got fired from being the safety officer of this high school, but there should be punishment. This is a crime.
Exactly.
Attempting someone who was in a car and using a firearm, 3 shots. For me, there's no excuse for him to do that. And what I don't understand is that in the beginning, according to the video and the people who were witness, they said that he was warning with a pepper spray. Well, there's a whole difference between pepper spray and actually shooting someone, right? So what are your thoughts on this?
So apparently after some reading, I learned that the 18-year-old and 15-year-old were in a fight. And then like you said, the officer threatened to use pepper spray. And then after that, they stopped. Mona went into the car and then he shot at the car and it went to the back of her head. There was no point of that. And he directly violated the use of force policy, in my opinion, by shooting at the moving vehicle, especially if there was not an imminent threat. If the fight stopped and she wasn't physically threatening the 15-year-old at that point, after he gave him the warning, then he shouldn't have shot at them. So I don't see why this happened. There's no excuse. There's no way he could justify this. And I feel terrible for what happened to Mona. I feel terrible for the Rodriguez family, and I feel terrible for her 5-year-old child who had to witness this, as well as the father's child, as well as the father of the child and his brother.
Totally.
Yeah, and what's really sad about it, it was completely unnecessary. He did violate the policy as far as safety officers using firearms. The school released their policy. He made multiple violations. He fired at a moving vehicle, a person who was fleeing through a window. All of those are absolutely inexcusable. So it's pretty cut and dry that what he did was completely wrong. It's on video, and if you see the video, they're driving off. She may have been doing something that she shouldn't have been doing and having a fight with another student. But does that warrant being shot at when you are unarmed and driving away? He was completely out of line, absolutely deserved to be fired. And the DA, after this investigation, I'm sure the DA is going to press criminal charges against him for this, as they should.
I agree. Those are the consequences. You took a life, especially of an 18-year-old woman, but a teenager. Yep. And for that, if he gets arrested or whatever happens to him at this point, that is his consequence. No matter what argument can be made here, we can all agree that Mona did not deserve to die, and her thoughts and prayers are with her family and friends. Facebook is under fire after recent statistics that prove that social media platform is harmful for society. The Facebook whistleblower who pulled the covers on Facebook in a 60-minute interview testified before Congress on Tuesday, claiming that Facebook and Instagram are putting profit over public safety. Former Facebook employee Frances Haugen claimed the social media platform hid research records that showed that the Facebook was a danger to democracy and harmful to young women. Haugen said that Facebook was morally bankrupt, and she put the full blame on Zuckerberg, saying, quote, "The buck stops with Mark," end quote. Zuckerberg responded in a Facebook post denouncing what Haugen was claiming, saying she was a low-level employee who did not have access to the very records that Haugen took before she left the company. Although Zuckerberg is denying that Facebook is designed to reward anger and division, he did agree that Congress should change social media regulations. So, for example, I know that, the platform Instagram, children can feel terrible about their bodies after seeing several posts of women who don't look like them. And he understands that people claim that Facebook really attacks vulnerable people, especially people who are divorced or moved to a different area, by showing what people say is radical news. However, I'm not really sure how credible I find her. So according to the Associated Press, Haugen claims that Facebook is aware of the harm it causes to groups of people. And so, for example, it knows that on their platform Instagram, children feel terrible about their bodies, especially upon seeing several posts of people and other women who don't look like them, or that deceptive news targets widowed, divorced, or isolated people. And I could see why people say that. I could see why Haugen would say that. However, like I mentioned, I'm not sure how credible she is. So, for example, she didn't work on child safety, Instagram, and she didn't have the responsibility of doing research on these topics when she worked at Facebook, allegedly. She's a former data scientist, and she only worked there for 2 years, but if she didn't have access to those topics specifically, then is she really a credible source? Should we be taking her seriously? And so I'd like to ask you, kind of going off of that, do you think social media is harmful or addictive for teens? And do you think she has any credibility to what she's saying?
There are several points that we need to talk to. Number one, I would think that, yes, it's harmful. I believe that social media is harmful not only for girls, but boys and us. There's so much peer pressure in social media. Mm-hmm. They're always trying us to portray someone who we are not. And I think that really affects our personal life. Now, talking about her credibility, I think it's very interesting that she was just having this entry-level job. And now she's going to the Congress, and she's already in hearings, and she's trying to take something from it. I don't want to think badly about her, but I won't be surprised if her intentions were just to get some spotlight from the media, and in order for her to look as a social activist. Nowadays, everyone wants to become a social activist, and it wouldn't surprise me to be honest with you all. What I'm also concerned is about Mark Zuckerberg. Of course, yes, he is the CEO of the company, but I'm sure this goes beyond his faculties. It's not only one man problem here. I believe that Facebook and Instagram and his social media that he's controlling, it's more than just one person. It's already a system. There's millions of users, and I think, yes, government should have more policies and rules over the social media regulations. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's been proven children have committed suicide. They've done it. Some people have done it on Facebook Live. They've actually done it with other people watching. There are reports. A young girl was on a news report yesterday saying that she does feel she suffered from anorexia because of social media. There's pressure. There's your life, and then there's your Instagram life. And those look like two very different things. And people are happy. They look happy on Instagram. There's a lot of pressure. But behind and under this, beneath the surface, there's usually a lot of stuff. Everybody's dealing with something. But when on social media, everything looks happy. Everything looks, vanilla. And that's just not the reality. There's so much pressure, like you said, for especially students, children nowadays with all of the different media platforms that we have. So do I find her credible? I'm not sure, but whether she's credible or not, she's bringing up a valid point. Whether this did occur on Instagram and Facebook, or she's doing this as a publicity stunt, she's bringing up a very valid point. And I think that's something that we really need to take. The bigger picture is here. The bigger picture here is that we need to take that into accountability and then see what we can do to fix it, because it is a problem. Social media should be a safe place for all users, and we hope that Congress can make some changes to these current statistics. Now, Texas is currently facing a bittersweet victory of their own regarding their abortion ban. A Texas federal judge blocked the state's 6-week abortion ban yesterday, a victory for abortion rights advocates, but it may just be temporary. U.S. District Judge Robert Pittman said, quote, "From the moment SB 8 went into effect, women have been unlawfully prevented from exercising control in their lives in ways that are protected by the Constitution," end quote. This comes 3 days after thousands of protesters marched the streets near the Capitol outside of the Supreme Court in response to the Texas abortion heartbeat law banning abortion after 6 weeks. Men, women, and children carried signs and marched, some for a woman's right to choose and some against it. Marchers gathered locally in downtown Fullerton, where hundreds of demonstrators assembled outside of the North Justice Center around 11 a.m. In Irvine, protesters gathered on Alton Parkway and Culver Drive, just 2 of the 600 planned marches across the nation. Fullerton and Irvine police departments were assisting protesters, making sure the march was under control, and signs were donated to both marches by Planned Parenthood of Orange and San Bernardino counties. An anti-abortion group, Texas Right to Life, that advocated for the measure in the Texas legislature, called the ruling wildly broad and astonishing in its, quote, effort to obstruct state judges and court clerks from fulfilling their lawful duties, end quote. So it's interesting that this new block on the original Texas ban is coming 3 days after the march. So you guys think there's power in marches?
Definitely. Like, just seeing that impact makes me realize, wow, if I just go out there, maybe try my hardest to make change, then maybe something will happen. But I think it's about how many people are out there, how passionate they are about this cause. But I want to say that I do think, though, although after this hold, I think there is a possibility that this could pass, which is still scary, because it was only a 5-4 decision that the Supreme Court decided that it would put off the law for now. So with that narrow margin in mind, I really think this is a threat to democracy and women's bodies. But as I mentioned, just seeing this happen means that there's a possibility that hopefully women will be able to have control over their bodies in the future regarding this abortion bill. What are your thoughts, Jorge?
Exactly. For me, it's logical. I mean, it's their rights, and they have the right to decide and choose for their own bodies. That's it. Also, for a national perspective, most of the states and people, society, they are also thinking that these bans shouldn't even be in place since the first time. So things like this makes you to understand that topics like this, they are very complex, but at the same time, very simple. And I'll explain. Simple because we know that it's their rights, but complex because once this topic gets into our judicial system and into politics, most of the times it gets more conflictious. So hopefully that justice for women can be achieved as soon as possible, and that other states can take this into experience that it could be a threat to democracy. So we should just stay open-minded and leave the women because they have their own rights for their own bodies. A temporary win is a win, nothing less. And we are here at CSUF are rooting for the safe protesters to keep fighting for their justice. Former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama finally broke ground on what will become the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago last Tuesday. The former president mentioned during an event at a construction site that he wanted the Presidential Center to be more than just a, quote, static museum, end quote. The Obama ceremonial dug shovels into the ground and overturned them onto the construction site, accompanied by the Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. The 44th president described how meaningful the city of Chicago was to him early in his career, saying it, quote, taught me change doesn't start on a global scale. Change starts one person at a time, end quote. Well, what do you think about this construction site? In my opinion, I'm really happy for it because I think like from the presidential perspective, as him being already a former president, this is just like the perfect way to conclude your political career. Why not having a museum trying to get more people to know you as a person, as president, but also getting together? Because I was looking into the website and there are gonna be a lot of features. It's gonna be like a playground for kids, it's gonna be a museum, a library. So surely it has a lot for every single type of person in society. So I agree with that. But what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I looked at pictures, and although it looks beautiful, I want to kind of point something out. So essentially, this library is pretty controversial because environmentalists are saying, well, Jackson Park here in Chicago, you know, it's a park for a reason. We don't need to have another building here that really inhibits, not wildlife, but just greenery in the city. And so what's also interesting is that on Obama.org, which is the website where they're talking about it too, and about Obama's legacy, it says the library will, quote, breathe new life into a park that has long been protected and loved, but underused, end quote. But is it really underused if people could really benefit from this park, benefit from the greenery and the health benefits? What are your thoughts, Crystal?
I'm not so sure about the location. Former President Obama wants that location because of what Chicago means to him. And I think it is important for us to have presidential libraries. I just recently went to the Nixon Library and it was so informative. It's a way for people who may not have even been alive during that president's administration to see what they did, good and bad. It's history, and we should have these libraries. It being in that location, I'm not so sure if that's really that big of a problem. It seems to me like it is a good location for it, being that it is at that park, but I don't know if that is necessarily a bad thing. So I'm not sure on the location. The fact that it is in Chicago, I think it's very important to the Obamas, and and that's part of the reason why he did choose that location. And with that, that's all the time we have today on the Report Roundtable Discussion. Have a safe week, everyone, and stay tuned for more news, views, and info. I'm Chris Adler.
I'm Amanda Mendoza.
And I'm Jorge Flores. As always, tusks up, Titans.